I think you have to bet on yourself if you want to be a writer. I'm okay. Here we go, guys. Here we go. Now we're getting to the meat of it. Here's the controversy. I find authors' online performative self-depredation absolutely infuriating. Like, oh my God, someone liked my book. It's like, yeah, you didn't think they would. You really did. You didn't think anyone would like your book. Of course you thought they would, because you wrote it. Like, why wouldn't you write it differently? I'm sorry if you're an author of deeply low self-esteem, but come on, guys. Like, at the very least, let's not make a sort of an international sport of talking about how much self-doubt we have. Like, have a bit of belief in ourselves.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 77 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, the Chewie to my Han Solo, the Joker to my Commander Shepard, MJ Kuhn. How's it going, MJ?
Hello, I am doing lovely. How are you?
I'm doing very well on this fine day. And if you want to support MJ, this lovely human being, and her lovely books, you can go pick up Among Thieves. If you want heists and whores and all those other H's and all that fun stuff, MJ's got you covered.
Pretty sure one of those was a W, not an H.
Doesn't matter, MJ. We're not about something.
We're not about grammar on this show about writing.
No, we are not. And there is a sequel, so go pick it up. Thick as Thieves. You're going to enjoy it. She's got a copy there. Yeah. As well, a quick note for listeners, the official SFF Addicts Patreon and merch store are live, so check the links in the description to support what we do here. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, welcoming today's guest, returning for the second time, Ed McDonald, author of the Raven's Mark series, Daughter of Redwinter, and its brand new sequel, Traitor of Redwinter. Hello, Ed. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks very much. And I'm back. Yes, I'm back.
Yeah, and you're back.
Let's do. I'm going to hold up the UK cover here. You've got the US cover.
I've got the US hardcover.
Hard cover. Yeah. I don't have a copy of Traitor of Redwinter. I have been running around across from America, and now we're in France, and I don't have any copies with me, so I can't hold that up. But the cover is amazing. Actually, it
exists and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I've actually seen the cover for book 3 now as well.
Dude,
I've seen the sketches anyway, and it's going to be amazing. It's even better.
Ooh.
I'm so excited,
I can't wait. Yeah, because Adrian and I were talking off air about how pretty the cover for Traitor of Redwinter is, and it's I mean, Daughter of Redwinter too. I mean, gosh, the whole art style on that series.
Yeah, the artist is
super cool.
She's called they're called Galen Dara, I think, and it's just very awesome.
Yeah, they're crushing it. I love it. Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, to kick things off, for anyone who isn't familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes. Okay. So I have been a published author since 2017. I write predominantly epic fantasy. In fact, I only write epic fantasy. That's all I've written. So the first series I wrote is The Raven's Mark. Raven's Mark is set in a sort of post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland, the aftermath of a war. It's got a Renaissance kind of vibe, and it's a story of basically like trying to stop a bunch of Cthulhu's coming and doing you in. The Raven's Mark is very much kind of like action fantasy. I would describe it as. I always think of it as being a bit like Mission Impossible, but if everyone blew each other up with sort of laser weapons in a fantasy setting, which seems to happen. And then Daughter of Redwinter is the first book of the Redwinter Chronicles. This is quite a different kettle of fish. My first series is about a guy who goes from being 40 to 50 over the course of the 3 books. This series is about a 17-year-old girl who is able to see the dead, and that is not a good idea, and it doesn't go terribly well for her. But overall, as well, this series asks the question: what if you were Maleficent, but you also had to be the good guy as much as it's possible while raising the armies of the dead? What if that's how you have to save the world? So it's slow build. We start off at wizard school basically and work our way through. By the time we get to the end of the third book, there isn't not much of anything left, to be perfectly honest.
Shit gets blown up.
But outside of writing, I haven't done it since the pandemic. But I used to be a historical European martial arts student, I suppose. Trained swords and stuff for about 7-8 years. I live principally I was going to say I live mostly in London. I live in London and LA and France.
You little globetrotter, you.
I would say so, like 3 super objectively cool locations, honestly.
Unless you live in one of them all the time. And then you're like, man, I hate this place.
So you get out of there. You dip into the other one so you don't get
exactly.
bored.
There you go. That's why you got 3. You got to bounce.
Smart man.
Just thinking ahead. Oh, I love that. So obviously very into fantasy. You're writing a whole bunch of it. I want to know how that started. So and specifically even your relationship with reading sci-fi and fantasy. Like, what are your nerdy origins?
I mean, for me, it's always a weird question, this one, because I don't know a time where this wasn't true in my life. I remember being really shocked once when I went to university and discovered that other students there hadn't had action figures as kids. They just had video games or something. So I was like, but how did you make your own stories? Like, so, I mean, I remember, back to He-Man is probably the earliest. He-Man, the cartoon of the Amazing Spider-Man and Friends, I think it was called. And I've been writing in one format or another literally as far back as I can remember. Me and my brother and sister invented a race of grape people who were called the Obladudes. The Obladudes.
Dude, that's amazing.
They have a whole lore. Somewhere in my parents' house, there's still a cereal box filled with like a wad of drawings and stories about the Obladudes. And I drew comics probably from when I was about 7. Me and my brother drew our own comic. It was called Laser. Each episode of Laser was 4 pages long. It had a cover page. It had 2.5 pages of comics, and then it had 1/2 page of some special feature. The most memorable of which was the leadership election for the editor of Laser, which ran concurrently. I think it was John Major being elected in the UK at the time, and it was won by a stalking horse who was a stalking horse, which is a very niche political joke. And when I was about 9, I really didn't get it. But my brother obviously thought it was funny. So yeah, I wanted to be a comic book artist. I got really into manga, the X-Men stuff, and then my entry to fantasy was my mum. My mum she was a teacher, and she spoke to the school librarian. And this is my mum's fault, really. She came back with it was the first 2 books of the Belgariad, David Eddings. Now, I know we don't speak of David Eddings anymore because of his actual crimes, but I fell in love with it, and I took him on. We went on a holiday, and I just reread them over and over through the whole holiday. And it was exactly the right moment for me to pick those books up because I guess I was like 11, 12 or 13, something like that. It's this coming of age story about this boy, and he's not very cool with girls, and they don't like him because he's a dweeb. For some reason, that really resonated with me. I don't know.
Dude, that's amazing. Okay, so first of all, you and your siblings, great name choices. The Obladudes is like, I'm fully on board. I don't know why you mentioned that, and I thought of the California raisins immediately.
I wouldn't have known
I don't
what
know
they
if you ever
were.
had the. Yeah, I know they're very North American.
Sound like an undead version of the Obladoos.
No, they were like rock and roll raisins. It was pretty cool. MJ, did you ever see those?
Oh, I
You
was
know
very. I
all
think
about the
I
California
literally
raisins.
had. I don't. I think I got them from like a cereal box or something. But I had like little figurines of the
Yeah.
California raisins.
Well, the Obladoos' two main interests. They're into skateboarding. None of me and my brother or sister could skateboard. We obviously thought that was cool.
Yeah.
It was also very easy to draw like a half pipe and then draw them skateboarding on it. And their other hobby was farting at Vickers. It was like sport.
As one does.
As any skateboarding hooligan does, just going and farting on a Vicker.
No.
We're pretty short on Vickers here in the U.S., but
yeah. There are plenty of skateboarding raisins, though.
Tons of them.
Tons of them, dude. Amazing. Okay, so you mentioned like comic books and all these stories that you wrote with your siblings and everything. How did that take shape later on into you thinking about writing more professionally and thinking that this is something that I want to do in a more serious manner, such that you were like, I'm going to tackle writing a big fantasy novel?
I started writing my first fantasy novel when I was about 11. Me and my sister were writing it together. It was called The Phoenix Ruby, I think.
Another great name.
Yeah.
You guys are killing it.
And I started writing real long form when I was about 15. And I think I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons then. I think it was AD&D 2nd edition with my friend, and it was quite natural that I just wrote up quite a lengthy backstory for one of the characters from the game. And so before I was 18, I knew that what I kind of believed I was going to do with my life was write books. Unfortunately, at 17, I discovered going to the pub and failing terribly to ask girls out. I spent my university years mostly just hanging out with guys who liked Magic the Gathering. So I had a bit of a break then, but then I didn't want to go and have to do a real job. So I maintained all the time that eventually I would try and make a living writing books, which there's one part very naively when I was about 22, and this is 20 years ago, guys, but when I was 22, I quit a job in order to write a book. I had no idea how much authors could get paid. There was no internet to ask anyone at this time. I'll just write a book. I've got enough money to pay my rent for 3 months, 6 months, something like that. I'll just do it.
Oh, that's enough time for Trad
That's
Pub.
a bold move, yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know what? You were
months,
just betting on yourself, and that is admirable.
That is some foresight right there.
It is, right? You manifested it. I love this for you.
I think you have to bet on yourself. If you want to be a writer, okay, here we go, guys. Here we go. Now we're getting to the meat of it. Here's the controversy. Yeah. I find authors' online performative self-depredation absolutely infuriating. Like, oh my God, someone liked my book? It's like, yeah, you didn't think they would. You really didn't. You didn't think anyone would like your book. Of course you thought they would, because you wrote it. Like, why wouldn't you write it differently? I'm sorry if you're an author of deeply low self-esteem, but come on, guys. Like, at the very least, let's not make a sort of an international sport of talking about how much self-doubt we have. Like, have a bit of belief in ourselves, because you have to, because no one else is gonna make your books write themselves except you. And if you're paralyzed, I think it's really toxic to pass on to budding aspirants that it's normal to really think everything you're writing is terrible and not want to show it to people. It's not. You should want to show it to people because it should be good. Okay, that's my first rant of the year.
I love that. No, that's very inspiring. I think it's okay to think your first draft's going to be shit, because it often is. But you should feel good about yourself after that.
Especially if you... I got to meet a hero author of mine a few years ago. Was sitting next to him at signing desk. And as a fan came up to him, this guy says to, and I'm not going to say who it was, but this fan wants to buy a book and get it signed. The guy says to him, "Oh, good choice. This is the only one of my books that isn't absolute shit." And I thought, I love your books.
Wow.
And I'm sitting right next to you.
Like all of your books.
Yeah, so if I love all your books and you think it's stupid to like them, what do you think of me? Like, am I an idiot? Like, have I made a mistake here? Like, and I think it does down your readers if you trash talk your own books. So that's why you'll only find the most excellent Ed McDonald books for sale in all good bookshops.
Yeah, you can say this one is my most excellent, not this is the only one
like
that
my
isn't shit.
favorite. This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
Although my favorite one is always just whatever one I'm working on right now because it's my current baby.
Mine is whichever one I need to sell the most.
Yeah,
You're like
whichever one you're most likely to buy. That's my favorite.
No, you're like a crow, like the new shiny thing that's right in front of you.
Oh, I totally am. 100%. 100%. Oh my God. Well, we talked a little bit, Adrian mentioned a little bit about your interest in the academic studies of actual ancient medieval history outside of the fantasy realm. And I'm kind of curious to dive into that a little bit. Was that something that came about? It sounds like you've been interested in fantasy and stories forever. Is that something that came about because of that interest, or did they develop separately and just happen to go together quite well?
It's an interesting one. I think it's really difficult to find a divide. I mean, when people say to me, "So what makes you interested in studying like sword fighting?" It's like, well, because I want to fight people with swords. You know. I find it peculiar if people are into, and there are lots of people though who are really into fantasy and have no interest in the historical inspirations it draws on at times. And in this, I find this as well weirdly in the tabletop roleplay game communities as well. There's so many people who love and are obsessively playing games, and they have no interest in reading fantasy books. I just don't understand it. But I did a degree in ancient history and I did a degree in medieval history, and they were just what you could study. My mum was an English literature teacher, and I didn't believe in English literature as a subject because there's no right answers. Like
I studied it at university, and I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of liked about taking English, though, because if there's no right answers, as long as I'm confident, bitch, there's no wrong answer.
The most subjective fucking thing.
Like, and how can you objectively grade a paper and say that this interpretation, like, why was the clock blue? What did it tell us about the inner world? It's like sometimes the clock is just blue.
Yeah.
the amount of and I'm sure, like, MJ, you must definitely see this yourself. The amount of stuff that people can read into things and say, and like, I've had messages saying, "Oh yeah, I can really see like the political structure here is like based on what was happening in American South politics." I'm like,
sure.
Great. I know that is like for me the scary thing about putting a book out there is that, like, I mean, it's whatever. They can read whatever they want into it, but they can read whatever they want into it. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone's bringing their own unique experiences and knowledge base to the reading experience, just like you did to the writing experience. And yeah, it is wild sometimes
MJ,
where you're like, that's not what I intended, but okay.
I had this with my writing critique group. Like my debut novel, the main character is like a bit of a crotchety middle-aged woman who is a detective, but she's also like a bit racist towards these mushroom-headed people. And one of my writing critique partners was just like, jokingly, you know how they say like a book is a reflection, or like characters are reflections of the writers that write them? Like, I wonder what's going on in Adrian's head. I was like, you shut the fuck up.
You were like, it's the characters, not me.
I am so discriminatory towards mushrooms. You have no idea.
You were actually very pro mushroom. We have talked about it much on this show.
So pro mushroom. But yeah, I totally feel you, Ed. I totally feel you on that.
But yeah, that's why I didn't do English literature or creative writing or anything like that. I think my mum would put me off. My mum, actually is in part responsible for my writing career. Like, not only in like all the games she made us play as children and all the inspiration, but also because when I was 13, I was writing this story, and it was kind of about it's about some dude with a sword in a monastery. And my mum looked at what I was writing and said, nobody wants to read books about people killing each other with swords.
Wrong.
Look at me now, Mum.
Right?
Look at me now.
Everyone wants to read books about people. Actually, no. You know what? If everyone did want to read those books, then we could probably all actually make a proper living off this.
Right, yeah, exactly. But still, joke's on your mom, because that's all I want to read is books about people killing each other with swords. Like, that's 90% of what I read. So
If there's no
Except
swords
those
in
weird
it,
D&D players who don't want to read fantasy. Like, I don't understand that.
I don't understand why
Yeah.
you read a
The
book without
crossover's built in.
swords. Like,
yeah,
what is that?
it's fair. It's fair. So has this research, this educational basis, and also your experience with the historical European martial arts, has that influenced your writing? I mean, I have to imagine it would. Every time I'm writing like a fight sequence, I'm always like, God damn, I wish I actually knew how to use a sword. You know what I mean? How have you found it influences your writing?
So it's okay. So first of all, you know the expression "a double-edged sword." Yeah, I hate that expression because you don't cut yourself on your own sword. You're not like, oh no, I'm making a mistake.
I mean,
do,
if you
you're
hold
doing
it by
very
the
wrong.
blade, if you hold it by the blade, maybe.
Or you just swing it back way too far.
That would apply
Like,
for a single-edged sword.
Like Geralt trying to put it into his scabbard and he ends up like stabbing himself in the back instead.
That would apply to a single-edged sword.
Fair.
Like a
That's why
double-edged butter knife is the right expression, I think, because you do put your finger on the back of that, right, when you're cutting stuff. Anyway, so knowing about this stuff, on the one hand, it's I do think it's really important to me that I give that verisimilitude of realism. You know, it has to feel like you're reading something that I have to be able to imagine, and see the actions in my head. And that means that. So, this is the best way of rephrasing it, actually. When you start doing HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts, the first thing that happens is for 6 months, you hate all the shows you see that have choreographed playing. And you're like, it's not real. They're just dancing. Those Jedi would never use their lightsabers like that. Look at their distance. They're totally in the wrong range. And you become this insufferable bore for about 6 to 12 months. And then you realize that's not what entertainment is. And actually, so certainly in the Redwinter books, there are some things I'll deliberately keep, so like taking a high guard, I'll refer to it as the watchtower, or behind the shoulder is a wrath guard, and I'll use these and I'll enjoy it, and I hope that readers sometimes go, "That's a wrath guard, yeah, I know that, yeah." But I've also been a little bit freer in that it is entertainment. You can't sidestep. Like the idea of avoiding a sword blow by sidestepping is ridiculous nonsense. Like the sword doesn't like fly so far down into the ground that you can get. It just goes bop, 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 bop. Yeah, it's not hard. But 90% of the books you read out there have people dodging aside from a blow and like. But you know what? Theatrically, that's fine. Like, so I've come full circle. I'm back in crank up Duel of the Fates, get your double sabers out, like flip through the air doing cartwheels. I didn't care anymore. I just want some snazzy action.
I want fucking swords in fantasy. That's all I want, man.
I love it.
Have you seen Ahsoka?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Not yet. I heard it's so good, though.
It's the best Star Wars. It just is.
Yeah. It was like Obi-Wan was just like a dumpster turd fire, whatever the fuck. And Ahsoka is coming back and being like, cool, Rebels is my all-time favorite Star Wars.
Well, that's going to say
period.
Rebels is my all-time favorite Star Wars property at present, and I know I need to watch Ahsoka.
So good. So good.
Such good fights.
I was saying this, and
entertainment, man. It's all about entertainment, though.
Someone said,
and that's good.
There's just a lot of swords in it. That's why you like it. And I was like, did I stutter?
Yeah.
Right? You're like, and?
Did I sidestep, bitch? No, I did not. All right, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the Raven's Mark series. How did Blackwing come about?
Oh, look.
The origins of that story. Ooh.
Ooh.
Look at that.
Don't know what's happened to the dust jacket, but this one has made it to France. None of the others have.
Nice.
Right. Back to the question.
Yeah. So tell us about the origins of Blackwing and the Raven's Mark series.
So I wrote. I had this job where they kind of they basically fired me, but without firing me, and so I resigned anyway. And then they realized I was indispensable and they couldn't do without me. So they tried to buy me back, and they had to give me a new job with my own office, a pay rise, and a golden handshake to come back. And then the guy who'd done this to get me to come back got fired himself, which meant that nobody at the company knew what I did. And this went on for about 8 months. I literally didn't have anything. I didn't have to do any work. So I just sat there every day and wrote a book. And it was 208,000 words.
That is the most beautiful corporate limbo.
So you had my dream day job, is what I'm hearing.
I just had this office of my own, right?
Here's an office. Sit here. Don't have any tasks.
Yeah. So I wrote this book, and it was.
They're like, wow, that Ed guy, he's always tapping away. He's so busy.
And they came and they installed that spyware stuff on your computer that shows them what you're working on all the time. So I just brought a laptop in and just did it on that instead.
Yeah.
Because
look at your search history to be really fucked up, like post-apocalypse, like.
Well, we haven't even got to Blackwing yet. So I was writing this other book, and it got to 300,000 words. Why not? I had the time, and then I sent it out to a handful of agents, and the agents came back and said, they said no. It's far too long. Could you cut it in half? And I realized, no, I couldn't. And I didn't really have a plot anyway. 300,000 words of no plot. Now, that company then got shut down. There's an
Can't imagine why. Seems like a great operation.
There's an investigative journalist program in this country that did an expose on it on BBC One, and they got fraud. I'd already escaped. But so I had this huge monster book, and I was so disheartened. I thought, I've got to write something short. So I started writing what would ultimately become Blackwing, and I thought, right, I'll write it fast and gritty. And I didn't really check how many words I was writing. I don't think it used to show you at the bottom. And I used to save every chapter in its own individual file. And then I checked on how far through the book I was, and I was like, I'm 160,000 words in. I'm halfway through.
I'm back to another 300,000 chunker.
And so I was like, I've just got to write an ending now. I've just got to write in 30,000 words or fewer. I've got to write an ending. I've got to come up with something completely different. And so that's what I did, and it turned into Blackwing, which I mean, this is slightly glib, but this then requires a massive rewrite of everything that's already happened. And the finished Blackwing was 165,000. And then an agent who was interested asked me to cut 50,000 words. So I did.
Wow.
And then he turned it down.
What?
No.
That's a dick.
He turned out.
You're like, thanks.
Cut out a third of this book, and then I'm gonna say no.
Right? And then the rejection note is, man, I just wish there was a bit more detail.
Yeah.
There's
like 50,000 words missing.
I'm hopefully kidding.
It was, I don't know what it is. It's just not quite there for me. It's like, there was a lot more of it for you before. I spent a month. But then 2 days after that, I got a request from my now agent and so obviously, he got sent the abbreviated version, which frankly was a lot better and didn't need that 50,000 words direct from the middle, which was but the bit that got cut was the point of the book. It was the original point of the book. But it turned out what I'd come up with around it, making it work, was so much better. And this is why I don't believe in architect writing. I don't believe in planning. I don't understand how anyone can have their best ideas before they've been writing the characters for at least 50,000 words. Just don't get me.
Or like coming into it with like a clear idea of like, this is the theme I want to tackle and blah, blah, blah. It's like some of that, the best stuff happens organically.
Well, that's what I say. It seems, and our listeners will know, I'm a big time believer in planning. So it might seem that we're diametrically opposed here, but I actually don't believe we are, because my approach to planning is I have to have a plan every day when I sit down, or else I simply will not write.
Mm-hmm.
But A, that doesn't mean I'm not going to deviate from the plan. Yeah. And B, I'm literally right now, the project I'm working on, I'm breaking it down to note cards, because it is I plotted it. I thought it was going to work. I wrote it. it's fucked. I need to do something different. So I think that there's happy mediums in between. But that kind of dovetails nicely into what I wanted to talk to you about next, which is, writing and completing Blackwing and, B, the rest of the Ravensmark series. What were some of those biggest lessons? It sounds like that, the more discovery writing process is more your process. What are some of the other lessons about writing and creativity? And then also the business side of things, right? Like working with the agents and things like that. Like what were some of the takeaways from that series for you?
So for Ravensmark, that was very much okay. My biggest lesson I learned writing that was midway through the second book. Hardest part of writing a trilogy is the middle of the second book, because you are setting up the ending of book 2. You're also setting up the first half of book 3. You don't know what that is yet. You don't necessarily know what the ending of book 2 is. So you've somehow got to do all this foreshadowing that you don't know what you're foreshadowing. You can't know, really. But I was in the middle of it, and I was trying to write a council scene. I needed the council of Valengrad to get together and decide what they're going to do to sort this crap out. And I tried writing it, and after 3 weeks, I hadn't managed to write the scene. And I was starting to despair of it. And so one day I was sitting there, and I thought, what am I interested in today? And I'd been looking up 17th century suits of armor on Google, like you do all the time, obviously. So
Yeah.
Just casually.
Just been looking up a lot of English Civil War armor. So I wrote a scene in which Ryalt Galharrow is getting fitted with one of the suits of armor because I liked it and I wanted to write about it. And then, as I wrote, I thought he's got to have something to do. So obviously someone has to arrive with an urgent message that necessitates him being conveniently in the armor. For some reason, I also just thought it'd be cool to put in a building the size of the Empire State Building into like a Renaissance fantasy. So that's where he had to go. And then I was like, well, what is there when he gets there? There's a man without a face. That way I don't have to know who it is. So that got me writing, and I realized I don't need a council scene. If you are going to write a book scene where you have multiple speakers, none of whom are the protagonist, cut the scene. Relay the info some other way. Don't write scenes that you're bored by. If you're bored by the idea of it, the reader will hate it even more. Let yourself write what you want, because that's the point of it. Just be thoroughly self-indulgent. Like, write about armor, write about skyscrapers that don't make sense, and then go back through your book and put in that they were building it. And then that becomes a major part of the book. And the guy without the face, well, when you start asking yourself the questions, why am I writing about a guy who has no face? Why doesn't he have a face? And then you realize this, and it becomes the fulcrum of the whole plot. The armor scene got cut. It didn't make it into even the end of the first draft because there was no need for this 2-page long description of a lobstered steel suit of English Civil War armor. But it springboarded me into writing the things that mattered. So
I love that.
Yeah.
It was your catalyst. Yeah.
That was my biggest writing lesson. Be self-indulgent. Don't worry about the end product till you get there. Like,
and what about from the business side of things, or like promotion, publishing in general?
I think the biggest lesson to learn there would be you really don't know anything about it going in, and you shouldn't believe most of what you're told. But I do also think it's good to go in with a little bit of optimism. I find it really saddening to see there are large online communities of people who endlessly reiterate to each other about gatekeepers and how basically every demographic except them is not behind a gatekeeper. Like it's this sort of self-repeating cycle of anyone who's had success was nepotism, which we know isn't true. And don't get me wrong. At times it's difficult for different types of author. I say different types, that sounds awful. I mean, authors from different backgrounds and demographics to get into it. Certainly, basically, if you weren't white and male for quite a long time, that was quite hard. But if you look at fantasy now, look at the Goodreads, most read fantasy books, look at what publishers are buying. we've done a flip. Like we're now female-driven fantasy is far outselling male written fantasy, and publishers have taken notice and they are buying it far more. So, you know, I can't complain too much. I'm a British white man. Like, you know, it's not like, oh no, it's so bad for me. Of course I'm not saying that. Oh no, the tables have turned. They found us. Like, of course not. But there are, if you want, from the business side, getting to know the people who work in publishing, and I'm actually like, some of my best friends are people I've met through the publishing industry. They want to buy brilliant, beautiful books, and they do, and we find them coming out all the time. And so it's sad to see like these sort of echo chamber communities where it's really people patting each other on the back for not having got published. And that is not a viable way into an industry they want to be in. I don't think any authors who get published spend their time on the internet talking about how they're not published, like you, or you know, in a bitter way. It's perfectly well to say, I'm nervous, I'm querying, but publishing is only for, you know, it's only for the evildoers from the bad places. You know, like, who is that helping?
Yeah.
Imagine
I like grumpy Ed. It's fun.
I'm sitting on an actual soapbox. You can't see it, but
but I agree though. It's like it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's kind of like the incels of the SFF community, and it's like, the more you just piss about things that you didn't get, the less likely you're going to get the things that you wanted to get in the first place. It's like nobody's going to have pity for you, right? In that case, you know, because
the only things that ultimately make any difference are you sitting down and writing your words? Mm-hmm. Are you listening to sensible feedback you're being given by people who have knowledge? You know, like, you've got to be wary of whose feedback you take. There is, you know, if you're and we see this a little bit in certain other parts of the community, online communities, where people are really good at patting each other on the back and saying how great each other's work is, when they're hoping the other person will say the same back to them as well. You know, and then you've got communities of people who are all telling each other that they're brilliant, and none of them believes any of the others are brilliant. They only think that they are brilliant, but they're looking for the support. And it's sad. Like, talk to people who are in the industry. If you want to be in the industry, and you don't have to be. Indie publishing and self-publishing is a great opportunity these days. It's perfectly viable, valid route into being an author. But if you want to be in traditional publishing, find ways of talking to people who are in traditional publishing, and not just like thrusting your book under their noses.
Start a podcast.
Start a podcast.
Start a podcast. Well, even, you know, I feel like I didn't end up signing with this agent, but like my first like road into publishing was I went to a writing conference. It was local. It was like literally in my town, and a few agents came, and I paid, you know, I think it was $25 or something to be able to have a pitch slot where it was literally just the opportunity to talk with an industry person and get their feedback on what I was doing. It was my first opportunity. So, you know what I mean? There's opportunities to make those inroads, even if you don't know anybody in the industry. I think that's great advice.
Local, in person, but also online. There's so many ways you can go about
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, especially now. I mean, this I'm aging myself, but this was pre-COVID.
Aging yourself as if you're like 60.
I am 60 in my brain. We've covered this. This is why I bitch when we have to record late.
This is why you have so many cats.
I only have one cat. He's just very quick.
Yeah. It's like an illusion. His name's Thorn, so he seems like 13 dwarves at once, but he's actually just one.
It's true. He's the whole party.
I don't know why this would be interesting to your listeners, but where I am right now in France, we have these dormice, right? And I don't mean dormice like we picture like tiny little mice that sleep in bed.
Yeah.
No, we mean the dormice the Romans ate, which are large weasel-like. They are pokey-eyed little bastards, right? They've got these like manic eyes, right? And they just run across the roof all night long. You see this, and then they go, and that is what it's like living with dormice.
That sounds. You know what? Your place in France sounds a little bit less fun and cool than it did earlier.
You have to hose them off sometimes.
Yeah. Sounds whimsical. I like it.
It sounds whimsical. If they were the little tiny dormice, it would be whimsical. It'd be
Yeah.
like very like Disney
Not like
movie. but-
bug-eyed little screechy bastards.
Yeah.
Look them up. Look them up.
Big
They're like,
They're like on
It's like-
cocaine or something like that. Oh my god. Okay, buddy. Quick fun aside. Tattoos. If you could have a magical tattoo, what power would it hold?
I mean, that gives me any magical power at all, doesn't it?
Whatever you think would be the coolest power for a tattoo to have.
I mean, like, if you can have tattoo stuff like tattooed onto yourself, why not have it so that you can just completely change your appearance at will? That'd be pretty fun.
Love that.
Just look like whatever you want. But because I'm an author, I have to impose limitations and drawbacks on it, even though it's my power.
It can't be like that soft of a magic.
No.
Come on, man.
So it can't like turn you to steel or anything like that. It's just mainly for disguise purposes. Basically,
You can like look like a different person.
it's just a way to make yourself look hot without having to try.
I got abs
Perfect.
today.
I
Let's
love
do
that.
it.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like I've squandered my power here. I could have had like invulnerability. Like,
I mean, to be fair, in like the modern social media crazed world,
Yeah.
at will hotness would be a superpower. So that's super fair.
yeah,
Super fair.
but I don't feel like I'm really gaining anything.
Oh. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm already there.
It's all vanity, Ed. It's all vanity. Which of your tattoos is your favorite?
Well, okay, so I have this.
Well, you got a
It's-
sleeve,
it's
but you have
the-
different components.
The best component is this old. I don't know if you can see on there. Yes, just about to see this bird. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
my favorite bit. I mean, we've got
Very
Galharrow's Raven going on there. I literally got the tattoo from my own book on myself as a present for having finished the book.
That's the coolest stuff.
I love it. Ed, I did the same thing. I have the quill from Amongst Thieves tattooed on myself as a present. So yeah, it's valid. Okay.
It's really valid.
I kind of jumped the gun. I already have mushrooms on myself.
I love it. See, here's the thing. I love that because it's like you're going to get something tattooed on yourself. It's got to matter to you forever,
Yeah,
theoretically.
That's it. I will if ever I sell enough books, I'll. I mean, this was 24 hours of tattooing to get this sleeve done. In 5 hours since. But I'll have a Western style dragon done across my back and coming down this arm. Only halfway though, because you can't be symmetrical. Like, I don't think you should have symmetrically length things with tattoos. But
The human body is anything but symmetrical, so I agree.
yeah, more dragons on me.
Like it.
More dragons always.
Always.
Well, let's brain back to Redwinter Chronicles because I want to talk about them. I have not yet gotten to check out the second book yet. I've read, obviously, Daughter of Redwinter, and I adored it. What inspired the world? How did it take shape as Daughter of Redwinter?
So, to refer back to an earlier answer, I wrote this 300,000 word novel. After I
was that the origin of this?
after I'd written the Raven's Mark trilogy, I wrote a different book. I wrote a full novel. I found it on my hard drive yesterday, 120,000 words, straight in the bin. Because it's all right to be objectively, I write crap sometimes. And I hadn't been able to write properly for about a year or two after. And I started writing. I found this old book, and I thought, what if I could salvage something from it? And when I first written this book, it was very self-referential. The main character was a guy who was largely based on me from when I was younger. It was all the worst nonsense you can imagine. And as I started trying to rework some things through it, something felt off and didn't feel right. And I thought, I think I'm telling this about the wrong story about the wrong character. And so Rain was born out of that, and she basically just emerged full imagined straight out of my head and just took over the story completely. And I wanted to have some thematic element, and being a McDonald, a Scottish kind of Highland moorland type theme seemed appropriate. And so I mean, it's loosely based, as a loose basis in sort of Scottish and Gaelic folklore. Some of the creatures borrow, but it's a fantasy. It's not meant to be representative of anything real. But it helps to have some sort of backdrop for flavour. And I'd done sort of Renaissance Germany and Italy before in Raven's Mark, so that's where I took it. But a lot of the background, I don't know. When people say where do these ideas come from? It's like I don't know. I made it up. I wrote it down.
My ass.
My brain at some point.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of go back a little bit because your self-referential character was not the right protagonist, and that's how Rain was born. What made Rain the best protagonist for this series when you were kind of conceptualizing things?
So part of her writing is that during the writing of it, I'd started living with my then girlfriend, and we had a hell of a lot of time on our hands. I think we'd gone into lockdown, if I remember this right. I think we were in the first lockdown, and there was nothing to do. So we just talked and we talked and we talked, and we traded all our war stories of the past. And the more we talked, the more I came to realize that, and this is going to sound really pretentious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Men do not understand what the world is like from a woman's perspective at all. We just have no idea. Male is default and it's easy mode. And when through talking to my girlfriend about all these stories from her life, you realize that in every single interaction you have with another person, the fact that you're not male changes the situation that you're in. And it changes the way that you have to think about what you can and can't do. And I was, I can only try and imagine myself into that. But the simplest example is I can go walk around London at 3:30 a.m. in the morning to go and get some toilet roll if I run out. I can go to a 24-hour shop that's 10 minutes walk away through the dark streets. You can do that if you're a woman as well, but it's not the same. And that's the easiest way that I can describe it. And as we were talking about all these different things, I just ended up feeling that I wanted to write a character who reflected some of these ideas that I've, that it seems stupid that, you getting towards 40, as a man, you wouldn't know this, but we don't, because women don't tell you, because it's their normal everyday existence and they've grown up with it and they live it. And so this was really at the forefront of my mind while I was sort of setting to write a female protagonist. And I was so keen to try and get it right. We've all read the boobly, that's easy to avoid. That's so easy. Just don't objectify people. But what I felt from reading some books was that there were guys out there who were writing women. Well, no, they were writing men who were effectively dressed as women, looked like women, but were just men. They just acted like men. And I wanted to write a character who felt like herself, but I also wanted it to have some reflection of the reality of being a woman and what that, my imagined reality for her in a pseudo 12, somewhere between the 12th and the 14th century. It changes depending on what armor I want people to have.
Fuck historical accuracy.
Yes, it doesn't matter. So that was. I haven't talked about this before because I'm really quite wary of talking about this as a subject, because on the one hand you'll have guys who will scoff at it and claim they knew all along, and on the other hand, like, there'll be women out there who'll scoff at it and say you don't know anything, you can't possibly know. And you know what? They may both be right, and I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not. But that was my experience, and I wanted to. She was just the character who was in my head. She was just the amalgamation of what. I really wanted to write someone who felt like a real person. So these books they're incredibly introspective. There is a deep interiority. If you think of the way that Robin Hobb writes, fits, I feel like these books, these are kind of more on, we have a Robin Hobb blurb quote for book 2. Yes, that's right. If anything, the Redwinter books are character studies. Is pure character study. And if you've read the first book and you know the ending of the first book, this is a problem that I hope reflects what I've tried to do. The character interactions and the reasons people have been doing things. So, that's where she comes from.
How was it then to expand upon Daughter of Redwinter with the sequel, with Traitor? And what were some of the big challenges and like some of the most fun parts for you of expanding what you started there?
So I think of each book as having a character development arc. And I generally don't know what it is until I finish the book, which is really awkward because it's the main point of the book. I realized the daughter when I was writing the epilogue. It was only as I wrote the epilogue, I thought, that's what she's learned. Oh, that was her journey. And with Traitor,
I love that because that's how life works, though, right? You don't know what lesson you're learning until you learn it.
I didn't know what she was looking for. It's just because my protagonists come into my head. They're just there. I don't think about them. I don't work out who they are. I just know who they are and how they react to every stimuli. And so in Traitor, I wrote 90,000 words and then went, oh no, I've forgotten to put in an antagonist or a plot. And it'd just been a bunch of kids having relationship problems for 90,000 words, which don't get me wrong, that's not bad. But I did need to put in a bad guy or something of a problem to solve at some point. So that's how I normally write, though. I get 50,000 or maybe 100,000 words in and then go back and fix it. I always say fix it in post. Fix it in post-production. Yeah. But when I got to write Witch Queen of Redwinter, which I finished a couple of days ago, actually, that's the first time I've had to do chapter-by-chapter planning because there is a high-concept break in the way the narrative has to work, and it became impossible not to have a planned-out structure to keep multiple plot threads running simultaneously. So, but again, I still didn't know what the solution was. And when you write a book 3, it's so weird because you're not just finishing a book, you're finishing 3 books. And you've got to tie off all the plot threads you put in the first chapter of book 1. You know what? Queen of Feathers shows up in book 1, first chapter. Yep, there she is. No idea who she was. I didn't know.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is the series, the Chronicles of Redwinter, it's intended to be 3? It's a trilogy? You're wrapping it on.
I'd have done 5 or maybe even 7 if book 1 had like sold so many copies out the gate that they'd gone, actually, we'd like to expand the series. I'd have been like, yeah, sure. But no one has emailed me any such thing.
Emailed me. So for now, it's 3. We'll call it 3 for now.
It can't go beyond 3.
Okay.
The ending, and the same is true with the Raven's Mark books. Although you will find, as we go forward through the Redwinter Chronicles, this may be more of a shared universe than my editors at first suspected. Particularly into book 3. So yeah, but when I finish a series, like the character is finished, like not like I'm finished, I'm dying, but their arc is done. Like I've told Rain's story over 3 books. I couldn't write another book about her. She's complete. Galharrow, Raven's Mark, he is complete. Like there's no more story for either of them, unless someone wants to offer me a lot of money, in which case I can write books for days.
Rain
in which case,
back.
never mind. I didn't say any of that.
The Rain prequel trilogy.
Yeah, I mean you could, right? But okay, so if it's you've wrapped, it sounds like on at least drafting of book 3. What else are you working on, or can you tell us?
Yeah,
publishing some secrets. I know.
Tell you what. I'll do one better. I will read you the titles of discarded books. Okay, books that are not complete.
Yeah, I like that.
We have
Love that.
Coven Law, We have Hide a Wolf. We have Kill Team Go Go Go. That's my favorite.
I would say that's my favorite so far.
Back to laser vibes. I like it.
We have 7 Wolves Dead, The Chamber Game, Unkillable, and one of them is just called Shelved, so I guess that one wasn't going well either.
Or it's a mystery book about a librarian. I don't know.
I'm actually trying.
There we go.
I'm trying my hand. That is actually very good.
Shelved is becoming something new.
I'm actually writing something quite different. I don't have another epic fantasy trilogy in me just yet. I'm planning to write standalones only. This is a market perspective as well. Publishers are not buying trilogies up really at the moment, and readers do not seem to be buying them. So if I was giving advice to a young debuting author, I'd say you're looking for a 2-book deal for 2 standalone novels, possibly with a connection between them. But that's what I need to be doing for this. However, I'm also I'm about 20,000 words into something completely different. It's supernatural. It's not fantasy. It's not epic style fantasy. And we'll see where that goes. I have no idea. I have no idea if that'll go anywhere. But I hope so. It's fun. I started writing it as a break. I got stuck on a bit of. I think I was stuck writing a bit of Traitor of Redwinter, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just thought I'm just going to write something for fun, just to enjoy it, and I did. So yeah, we'll see. I'm keeping it fairly under wraps at the moment.
Well, thanks for sharing those titles with us. I'm intrigued, especially by Shelved. That sounds amazing. All right, good sir. Well, we are going to close out. If you could give listeners and viewers a good bit of soundbite writing advice, and B, tell us a weird or random fact that you find to be utterly fascinating. Okay,
a bit of writing advice. Just write what you think is interesting. Just write what you think is interesting. That's the only thing you can do. There isn't, and there's no secrets. There's no other options. All you can do is sit down and write it. I don't believe you can teach anyone to write. This will come back and bite me one day when I'm trying to run a creative writing program, or on the next masterclass we're about to do in for 10 minutes. The thing that makes you learn to write is writing. And if I had to pick a second thing that works, is critiquing. So critique other people's work for free. Just the first 3 chapters. Don't need to go any further than that, and you will see the same errors repeated over and over again. And when I say errors, I mean things like, there are 12 named characters in the first 3 pages, and you don't know who anyone is. Nothing is happening in this chapter. And those are errors, because you're not achieving your goal. You're right. Like, I've got to stop saying things that get me in trouble. Please, can we have no more books that start in taverns? This year I've read 7 books that they're all debuts, or they all start in taverns. This isn't D&D. We're allowed to meet our characters somewhere else. So
it has to be a tavern. That's the rules.
Yeah.
And then a completely random fact. I had a good random fact earlier. What was my random fact I had earlier that I gave you? Do you remember my random fact? No.
No, I don't. Sorry.
No, I don't know if I have marsupials. The kangaroos are the only marsupials that can fit a grown tortoise into their pouch, and they do so sometimes just for body armor.
Wow.
Do they really?
No, of course they don't. That's ridiculous.
I was wait, what?
I was just imagining dolphins do a lot of shit for fun. Maybe kangaroos just toss a tortoise in there.
I don't know shit about kangaroos. It could be real. They're just oh, you ready to go? Let's go, bitch.
Is that their version of deadlifts? Is just toss a tortoise in there and just give it a go?
I was this guy knows stuff. He's British, so he just automatically sounds smart. And also, armor, so maybe animal armor.
Yeah.
It was believable. It was believable.
Yeah.
It sounds like it would work, right?
If anyone out there wants to write a fantasy series about anthropomorphized kangaroos with tortoiseshell shields, go for it.
There you go. That's the secret project, maybe.
That's shelved. That was shelved.
That's what shelved is.
Oh, brilliant.
Amazing.
All right. Ed, thank you so much for hanging out with MJ and I today, buddy. It was a pleasure as always. And for anyone who contributes to our Patreon at $10 or more a month, there'll be a reading by Ed from Traitor of Redwinter. So go check that out and go pick up Daughter of Redwinter and its sequel.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Ed, can you please let everyone know where they can find you online?
Oh, you can find me in far too many places. I'm on Twitter as at Ed McDonald TFK. I'm on I'm on Blue Sky as Ed McDonald Author. I'm on Instagram as Ed McDonald Author. I'm on Facebook as Ed McDonald probably. And yeah, basically just like type my name in all the places and ignore the actor and the guy who murdered someone in Tennessee, and then you'll find me as the third most famous Ed McDonald.
Beautiful. All right. On that brilliant note, you can also follow SFF Addicts on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at sffaddictspod. There are no serial killers or other famous
That's what you
SFF addicts.
think.
And you can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. MJ, what about you?
Yeah, you can also find me too many places. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, wherever else. All of them, I'm just at MJ Kuhn Books. All one word.
Beautiful. So that's it for this episode. Stay tuned next week for part 2 with Ed for our mini masterclass on supernatural magic. Now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.